I was 9 when the voices began. I think the voices were my response to trauma and abuse. My family background wasn't that great. And I think the voices protected me, and still do. The voices were often encouraging, but self-deprecating as well. They were critical of other people and suspicious of their motives. That made me very wary of people and isolated me quite a bit. I didn't really know what was going on or whether it was normal or not. It was just something that I was living with at the time, and I thought everybody probably went through the same thing. And the voices became quieter for a while. Then, when I was 14, they became louder and more serious. I had no friends, and I'd sit in my room for long periods. I was going through a deep depression and began to drink to mitigate the voices. And that helped for a time, until my early 20s. But then alcohol became a big problem for me. I lost a series of jobs because of the drinking, and the voices became really troublesome again. So I stopped drinking for a while and I moved into media work. I didn't tell anybody about the voices. I was worried people would think I was mad or that somehow I'd lost control of my senses. I had a career based on credibility, so it was a bit embarrassing and I thought I'd lose my job. Sometimes the voices were funny and quite witty, but they became more deprecating and more aggressive toward other people. If I was tired or lonely or feeling isolated, I'd slip into believing the voices and they'd become less encouraging. For a long time, I saw them as being separate things. They were spirits, otherworldly. I saw them as separate to myself. When I was 31, between the voices and feeling depressed and pressures at home and work, I had a breakdown and attempted suicide. I was hospitalized in an acute mental health ward for 3 months. I didn't talk about the voices because I thought they'd keep me in hospital for longer. I was put on antipsychotics and tried to say the right things, and after a period I was discharged. I relocated, but the accommodation that I'd organised fell through and I was homeless for 2 or 3 weeks. I ended up staying with friends, but I'd stopped taking my medication and went downhill very rapidly. The police found me wandering around the streets dazed and confused. I was taken back to hospital where I stayed for about 6 months. But this time, I started talking about my voices. I didn't really want to because I knew it'd mean more medication, but the doctors asked me what kind of voices they were. Commanding, encouraging, aggressive, loud. And I think it concerned them enough to increase the antipsychotic medication I was on. While I was in hospital, I started painting. It was helpful because it took my mind off the voices. It was the first time I'd done anything creative, and it distracted me from being inside my head. And that's something I've continued with. When I got out of hospital the second time, they organised talking therapy sessions for me with a psychologist. But my head wasn't in it. The idea of recovery was foreign to me. Everything was so bleak and so dark. There was no hope. It was like being in a coal-covered cave. I had a couple more periods of hospitalisation, but gradually, over the past 2 years, things have changed. What's helped my recovery? My commitment to staying well and the support I've received. Talk therapy is now really helpful. My suicidal thoughts are way down now. I still think about it occasionally, but it's not dominating every minute of my day. I'm also exercising more, getting out more, working in the media again. There are more things in my life now to mitigate the voices so they aren't so much of a concern. And 5 years ago, my support worker introduced me to a community arts centre. I had my first exhibition and sold 2/3 of the show, and that really encouraged me to keep going. It was the process of creating the art that was the most important to me, but I guess the sales were a validation of what I was doing. I feel there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. The voices are still there, but they're manageable, especially with my art and mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness allows me to just notice the voices are there and let them pass by. With meditation, I can focus on my body and what it's doing, my heart rate, my muscles, the weight of my head, and that takes me away from the voices. My advice to others would be to take your medication, do mindfulness and physical exercise, and talk to a therapist. Oh, and volunteer, because there's nothing like helping others to take you out of the self-indulgent nature of your illness. And stay close to whatever supports you that you may have had in place. It's important to tell your friends and family what you need. I'm happier now than I've been for 20 years. And I've learned everybody's different and that we're all complex human beings. I'm not all bad, and I'm not all mad either. I do have something to contribute.